Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy MKS here, back here with another video. And I'm going back to the topic of Asia. So these are some of the events I dreamed that an Asian alliance or whatnot could, basically an Asian network could make or create. And set up and whatnot. So I would love for them to have buildings which could host such events and summits and conferences and whatnot. Um, especially in Central Asia, but also in different Asian nations, as well as many Asian nations as possible, but especially in Central Asia. So if and when this alliance is set up, I would say Asian Union, but that could get mixed up, as I talked about in the past, with the African Union, because they have the same initials. But I'd love to know what you think and what suggestions and tips and ideas and whatnot, and just general thoughts you have. But yeah, some of them could be where they invite different dignitaries, diplomats and politicians and whatnot, and others could be where they have them on Zoom. But I'd love to know what you think about my ideas, whether you think they're interesting, workable, and achievable or not, whether you think I'm having pipe dreams or whatnot. And I think humanity can probably do a lot more than we think we can, maybe, but I'd love to know what you think about that. You think I'm being too unrealistic? One thing people say is that Asians can never really unite together, but I'd love to prove people wrong, including myself, maybe even, and see what Asians can achieve. So anyway, as per usual, I'm doing these list videos where I break them up into 4 parts. So having 40 ideas overall, so 10 for each one. So again, some could be physical meetups, and some could be on Zoom. And these are the sort of things I hope for an Asian alliance or whatever it could be called to work on. I'd love to know what your favorite name is on that note. Maybe for the next video, if I remember, I'll put in the live chat in the Q&A. What do you think would be the best name for such an alliance or network or union or whatever? And how can it be differentiated with the African? Although I hope they'll do pretty much the same sort of thing, but for Asia, obviously, in their case. So here goes. So number 1, I would love for them to have networks, especially in Central Asia, specifically to have summits, conferences, events, or whatever you want to call them, meetups, if you like, or meetings, more formally, perhaps, where I suppose meetups signify that it's more informal, but where they, I was just thinking, I hope I remember to go live on Facebook as well, sorry, where they kind of discuss ways to unite Asia, so to promote Pan-Asianism, to put it as simply as possible. So yeah, bringing together different Asian nations, the diplomats and dignitaries and whatnot from those from all possible Asian nations, to talk about what sort of goals they have for their nation and how they can help each other and learn from each other and work together. Number 2, on that note, they can learn from each other and what they can learn from the rest of the world, what they can learn from other countries outside of Asia and even other continents outside of Asia, about how to work together, how not to work together, and how to work together, and what they can achieve, and mistakes to avoid, and how to prevent divisions, and how maybe Asian nations could grow even better and even more if they unite. So for me, an Asian alliance, or whatever it comes to be called, if and when set up, I think should ways to prevent divisions and bring different Asian nations together. So if there's any sort of civil wars or any sort of so-called civil wars or any sort of conflict between different Asian nations, like China and India, or China and Japan, or China and Taiwan, or India and Pakistan, or whatever, hopefully an Asian alliance would be able to sit down and say, let's nip this in the bud, as they say. Let's try and prevent division and look at how you can work together to achieve goals and help each other. I often talk about like how India wants to be a $10 trillion economy. I think it is a 5 or even $10 trillion economy. I can't remember which one it is, by 2025 or 2030. Maybe a $5 trillion economy by 2025 and a $10 trillion economy by 2030, which would be sort of rounded up. And China's own goals and Japan's goals and that kind of thing, and how I think that we are stronger together, hashtag stronger together, as I often put it. So looking at what they can do to prevent divisions, as I say, and spread more unity and cooperation, cross cooperation again, prevent divisions and things like that. I hope they can look into ways to do that. And I think, again, if different Asian nations say, these are our goals, or this is our claim to certain land, or whatnot, and then other nations can put that forward, and hopefully they'll have independent judges, especially from Central Asia itself, which will allow to, again, prevent divisions and look at how they can work together and say who has the right to which land, or how they can share that land and use it for networking. As thought about a sort of Chindian network, for instance, where disputed territories between China and India could be used for networking purposes instead. And I hope that will be achieved all across wherever there are disputed territories, where, say, Chinese and Japanese business people can work together to look at how they can benefit each other's businesses and prevent wars, which will save and things like that. Number 3, I hope they'll have lots of libertarian events, which will talk about what freedoms people should have. People often talk about, people and nations and governments especially, often talk about what laws there should be, what people can't do, but I think it would be great if they can talk about what people can do and what rights and freedoms people should have, do have and should have, and what more freedoms people should have across Asia. Number 4, again, preventing wars, preventing division, peace, events that talk about peace, unity, cooperation, working together, again, hashtag stronger together, and that kind of thing, and animal rights, and preventing suffering for people and animals, especially young people, how they can support children and things like that. I think that those sorts of events would be pretty cool. Events, summits, conferences, I use those terms interchangeably. Basically, a meeting of different groups, a meeting of the minds, so to speak, where they can discuss how to achieve these sorts of things. Number 5, goal settings and ambitions for Asian nations. Again, like how India wants to be a multi-trillion-dollar economy. I think it is already a multi-trillion-dollar economy, but even higher and achieve even more. So how they can support companies like Reliance Industries, Tata, and others, how they can support their businesses. I was going to say destroy their business, but definitely the opposite to that. How they can support their businesses to grow. And again, businesses in China, Alibaba, and that kind of thing. Businesses across Japan like Toyota, Honda, and others. How they can raise their profile and help them to develop their businesses even further and their economies as nations as well, and what they can contribute. So supporting Asian ambition and things like that from different nations and individuals, which I hope to come to. Number 6, I hope they will have, I suppose this is very similar, if I'm honest, to the videos I talked about recently, which are like my goals for how I hope this alliance will work. It's pretty much the same, I've got to admit, as the one where I talked about how I would love for Asian nations to work together towards these goals. But I hope they'll have specific events where they can bring those people together to discuss those sorts of things. And as I mentioned before, like with Italian teams, like Serie A teams, I hope that they'll be able to like go to Italy and, as part of like diplomatic deals, like for instance what Meloni has, the Italian Prime Minister has with India, for instance. Maybe they could have that for all different Asian nations, which would encourage Asian businesses and even governments themselves, and even individuals perhaps, to invest in, especially their governments and even cities and towns, villages and whatnot, to have their own investment portfolios, sovereign wealth funds, and things like that, and basically investment vehicles to invest in Italian football, but also hopefully play football and practice with Italian teams and with the national team and club teams. So I hope that Italians will visit Asian nations and like practice together and do coaching in Asia, and hope that the opposite will happen. So hopefully that will be part of like deals they could have with different nations, so they can in Asia, so that it will build a partnership between Italy and Asia through and all possible Asian nations, and Asia itself, even as a continent, through football. And hopefully that will encourage more Asians to follow and support Italian teams, Serie A teams, and the national team perhaps even. But again, I hope they'll practice together. So maybe, let's say, people from Malaysia and other parts of Asia will support Italy as a second favourite team, or stuff like that, and hopefully follow and support Italian teams, Serie A teams, and whatnot. 7, similar for Celtic. I dream that Celts will go to, and Celtic FC itself, Celtic fans and whatnot, i.e. Celts, will go to Asia to practice and maybe even people from Celtic countries and practice football again, have a similar deal, and Asian nations could go to Celtic Park and play football at Celtic Park, and that kind of thing. So I hope they'll have lots of events on those kind of things. Number 8, also, it'd be great to hear from Asian nations about what they like about and love even about each other. And it'd be great to have street interviews where people talk about a more positive sort of thing, where people from China talk about India and vice versa, and even people from and Japan talk about what they love about China and vice versa. So hopefully it'll be a more positive sort of take, a more positive spin on those relations. And also even India and Pakistan, the old enemies they call them, maybe hopefully they have more positive interactions where people maybe ask people from Pakistan, like, what do you like, what we even love about India? Hopefully most of the people come up with something, and obviously vice versa. So hopefully that can improve relations, and they can look at what they can work on together to try and prevent problems that challenge the economy or take away the quality of life of citizens. So prevent illnesses, diseases, natural disasters, and things like that. At least they can look at how to limit the negative effect of such, how to help each other when they go through those things, heaven forbid. And I'd love for Asia to have as few natural disasters as possible, as few illnesses and diseases and problems generally. But I hope if and when they do have them, they'll be able to work together positively to solve such problems. Number 9, promoting Asian poets, artists, writers, and also projects from Asia, like engineering projects, design projects, and businesses. Again, raising the profile of Asian businesses, supporting Asian entrepreneurs, looking at what like the Asian Development Bank can do to invest in and just generally support Asian entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship and that kind of thing, and that will lead to more employment, of course, and just general growth in their economies. And number 10, also supporting young people. Again, looking at what I talked about before about in previous videos about like looking at how they can prevent or at least limit child and things like that. So how to keep children safe, including online, how to monitor children to make sure they're safe, and that kind of thing, and just generally improving the lives of children and adults and people of all ages, really. And again, animal rights and things like that across Asia, and helping the poorest 10% of people, possible Asian nations, is another goal to have. So I hope they'll have lots of summits, events, conferences and whatnot to look at those sorts of things. So these are parts of my dream for, let's say, an Asian, I was going to say Eurasian, but an Asian alliance, or whatever it could become to be called, the equivalent of the African Union, but for Asia. But again, if it was called the Asian Union, it could get mixed up with the African Union. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling, and I'd love to know what you think as ever, and I'm out.